Welcome to the library, young man.
Within the pages of a book,
This is my friend Fufu Cuddly Poops.
a world
Cuddly
of
Poops.
magic awaits.
I've come to deliver some bad luck.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Knightingale Reviews. I am Christian, the Curious Quill, and this is...
I'm Bailey, the Banished Bibliophile. And today we're here to
That
do
was
our...
banned bibliophile. You said banished. Today we have a June wrap-up that came
A month later.
August.
We're just going to go back and forth in our usual fashion. And let's begin.
Okay, so the first one is, the first two is Devil's Line Volume 4 and then Devil's Line Volume 5. They follow a boy named Anzai, who is a half vampire, half human hybrid. He's part of a Japanese police force that uses vampires in order to stop, like, vampire crime, and they kind of, like, keep everyone out of the public eye knowing about, or just keep everyone in the public from knowing that vampires exist, but they call them devils. And so Volume 4 and 5 are just a continuation of that. Devil's Line Volume 4, I gave a 3, and Devil's Line Volume 5, I gave a 4, because Volume 4 was just a continuation of the story that's been happening in the past 2 volumes. It was very boring. Volume 5 picked up, and it started a new storyline, so that's why I was happy.
So you're tired of the old storyline.
Yes, the one where everyone saw that devils existed. Spoiler!
Baby, I'm sorry! So the first book I read in the month of June was Weave a Circle Around, which was probably my favorite book in all of June, even though the ending just kind of was like, meh, yeah. This book follows a girl named Freddie who has just started high school. She kind of wants to go unnoticed in life, but that's really hard for her because she has a younger sister who is like this super genius, and then she has a stepbrother, Roland, who I believe is deaf. She just wants to get through life, get through high school, get it over with, doesn't want anything to blow up in her face, and then one day 2 strangers move in next door to her, and her life just kind of goes crazy from there. Especially when she finds out that the house isn't normal. Really weird things start to happen, like the house doesn't obey the law of physics, reality is twisted there, and so her whole life just kind of gets thrown for a loop that she really didn't want to happen. I ended up giving this book a 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was really wacky, and there's really no way you can put words to it. It was just so random, and at the same time, even though it was really random, there were parts where I thought it just kept, unfortunately, dragging on a little bit, especially in the middle, but it was still so entertaining I couldn't stop. My favorite character was by far Josiah, also known as Josie, who is one of her new neighbors. There is Josie, and then there's Cuervo LaChance, I believe is her name, or I don't know if there's a specific way you say that. Josie is a boy who is in her grade, and he was just so snarky and witty, I died. The best part of this book was the banter and the dialogue. I could go on for days about how much I loved it, and I wish that every book was up to this par of witchiness. But the rest of the book, well, particularly, like, everything was just, like, so bam, 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 like, so, I don't know how to describe this. This is just falling apart. It was just so out of the blue and so deranged that I don't feel like the ending did the book justice. It felt a bit underwhelming to me, unfortunately, and I think with everything that had happened in the book, I don't know if it could have been done any other way, though, or if there could have been, like, a perfect ending for it, just because of the nature of the novel. And a lot of people compare this to something like A Wrinkle in Time, which I totally would agree with. If you're into that, or like a more modern version of it, I would say even a better version of it, I would totally go for this.
What you gonna do? What you gonna do? Oh, that's what you're gonna do. Okay, bye guys.
Also, something that was really hard for me to get into was who the identities were of the neighbors. I couldn't really get over it. It just seemed so bizarre to me. And I couldn't accept it. Is that weird? That's on me. But otherwise, it was a fabulous, fabulous, fabulous novel, and I highly recommend.
Next book I read was Seraph of the End Vampire Reign, Volume 13. It continues following Yuichiro. Yes, it continues following Yuichiro. Follows you and his friends. And they're currently teamed up with Farid. one of the vampire noblemen, and he claims that he's going to take them on a road trip to discover, or not to discover, but to show them where the calamity of the apocalypse started and like what caused it. I gave it a 4 because the story is finally picking up again. Yay!
So
And,
after
like 10-second song, you're like,
I just keep going on. I feel really bad, like I'm just like so long-winded. Okay, so the next books I read were ones that Christian had read previously, and it was Devil's Line Volume 2 and Devil's Line Volume 3. To Devil's Line Volume 2, I gave a 4 out of 5 stars too. And to Devil's Line Volume 3, I gave a 4.25 out of 5 stars too. I think that the most frustrating part for me of Volume 2 was the main love interest of Anzai. I just don't love her as much as I could. She kind of reminds me a bit of... She reminds me of Shimi from Blue Exorcist a bit. Is that just me? She's got like the short hair and she blushes all the time. She has this kind of like weird version of Toru's voice from Fruits Basket. Like that slice of life. Sometimes.
but I'm in a supernatural thriller.
Yeah. So it was a bit odd. Most times I can take insta-love. Yeah, like usually I'm totally an advocate for it, but this time I'm just like, what? There's this one character who's in, if you see the cover for Volume 3, I like love that guy's hair. In this series, the reason I usually knock off something is because it's really confusing to keep some of the people straight, because a lot of people on the police force I can't keep.
They look the same except
Yeah.
for haircuts.
Yeah, so it's
Because
like
they're all cops, so they all have, I don't know, like the same clothing. And
same demeanor.
Yeah.
And so it's just really hard to keep them
especially
straight.
when they wear hats.
And also in Volume 3 there was this really random chapter that didn't have anything that I could think to like really went with the storyline. So I was like, what's happening? It was an interesting side story, but it's not something I felt like I really needed. Is that terrible? I feel like that's kind of
I feel like that's just like an extra they throw in. Okay, so the next book I read is called Evading the Dark. It's the book 1 in the Cross Chronicles by E.M. Rinaldi. I believe it was recently re-released. And so I got a copy from the author to read. It follows a girl named Casey who is a sophomore at Luthos Academy for Magical Beings. And she has no magical abilities, but she's descended from a long line of very powerful and well-known witches and like magical people. Her mother died when she was really young, and she's pretty much lived at this academy then for her whole life, and everyone there is like a total... It's really interesting because they're all born where they can wield nature. Like Avatar's Last Airbender, so earth, fire, water, or air. And weird things start happening, like she sees things in the forest that no one else like saw or like heard. And then she finds out there's this evil that's coming for them all. And she finds herself at the center of a prophecy that she has to fulfill. So I rated it a 4 out of 5 stars. Mostly because it was basically my high school experience. When you see yourself in a character, you enjoy it more because you can see everything from their perspective, similar to your perspective. So I did really enjoy it, and I did write a review, which you can look at down below if you'd like. Shameless plug-in.
So the next book that I read was Social Sinners Book 1 Behind the Lights by T.L. Travis, which the author asked if we'd like to review. So we accepted. It was very exciting. We were doing a Boy Meets Boy month in June in celebration of Pride Month, so this was one of the ones featured on our blog. This one follows a boy named Joey, and basically we find him at a point in his life when he's young and we get to see him grow up. And so Joey has sort of had a hard time of it lately. His parents split, and really the one thing in his life at the moment that really is important to him is his friend Ricky. They grew up together, they do everything together, they mean everything to each other. Their friendship is something that is staple in his life that he really appreciates. One day he gets to go to a concert with his friend, and together kind of sets them on a path to wanting to become a band, and then they find 2 other guys who join their band, and it's just kind of their road of how they became as famous as they did. And at the same time, having a little romance thrown in there. Oh. As they're becoming a band, there comes in this new element in the group, and his name is Lucas, who sort of steals Joey's attention, and that kind of makes a rift between Joey and the rest of his bandmates. Because Lucas isn't a member of the band, he's just someone in Joey's life. Okay. I gave this book a 3.75 out of 5 stars. I will leave my full review down below if you're more interested in my full thought. I really thought this book had the potential to be a friends to lovers story, and that is one of my favorite tropes, so I was super excited about this for that reason. Number 2, I'm really glad we got to see the backstory of the band and then see them to what they are now, because I feel like otherwise we would have lost a lot. And I know some people had complaints about they didn't necessarily care about certain plot points and they thought it was too detailed, and I can understand absolutely where they're coming from, but for me personally, I feel like a lot of those details showed pivotal moments and either how something was mended or how this meant something to the character later on in the story. I love the dynamic of the band, how they work together. I really loved how much the music meant to the bandmates, because I think music is a really big part of our lives, and a lot of what we love is sort of represented in our music that we listen to, and I think that's just something that is very relatable. Even though I don't necessarily listen to the music that our main characters play. Also, the passion the characters possessed was really something I think that the author was really able to shine through. The only thing I was slightly confused on was why Joey felt such an attraction to Lucas. Like, I knew there was a physical attraction for sure. I could tell from reading from Joey's perspective that there was this emotional connection. I just don't know how it got to that point. I don't know how it grew to that. And I think for me, like, as a reader, I just did not like Lucas, and I'm sure that was absolutely the point. But so as a reader, I couldn't understand how me disliking him so much, Joey could have liked him so much. The ending was just so perfect, so full circle, and I quite enjoyed it.
Okay, so the next book that I read is called Pisces by Melissa Broder. It follows a woman named Lucy who's been writing her dissertation for college for 13 years. And she recently breaks up with her boyfriend that she's been with for many years. And so this college tells her she needs to either get it done or they're pulling the plug on her funding. And so she's pretty much at what she considers rock bottom. Her sister, or her half-sister, who lives in Los Angeles, wants her to come and house and dog sit for her while she and her husband go on a vacation. So she agrees. And while she's house sitting and dog sitting, she comes across this mysterious stranger that's often near these rocks that she sits at night to contemplate life, and she finds out he's a merman, and so a lot of stuff ensues where she has like a lot of inner turmoil she has to deal with because she's like addicted to love and her going after her boyfriend's new girlfriend. She has to go into therapy, and it just kind of is like the messed up story that is her life. And it's a very weird book because this author has a strange writing style, but I feel like she's very raw and honest in what she says, and it's like things that people wouldn't admit to like thinking or saying. I gave it a 3 because it was very interesting. I kind of liked but disliked the ending for reasons I can't say because it'll be spoilers, but at some point once Bailey finishes reading it, we'll write a full review. So yes, that's my piece.
The next book I read was Skin Deep by Lily Lucchesi. This is the 6th book in the Paranormal Detective series, and this series we have together been reading for a really long time, and it's just one of those ones we love to read constantly. This book I gave a 4.5 out of 5 stars to. The author asked us to review this one. We were super excited because we're just so very passionate about this series. And I won't go into extreme details with this one just because it is the 6th book, but do know that it basically takes place in this world that is very much like our own. It basically is our world, except there are vampires, werewolves, witches, shapeshifters, fairies, all that stuff secretly living in order to police these supernatural creatures. This half-vampire, half-human named Angelica Cross has created the PID, Paranormal Investigative Division, to make sure that they stay in line and to keep the world and its craziness at bay. Along the way, she meets this man named Daniel Mancini, who is part of law enforcement himself. And together they basically take on cases, and it's just a real good time. It has a lot of fun pop culture references to things like Supernatural and also to anime, and it's just a lot of good fun times. And it is gritty, it's dark, it's sometimes humorous. It's got everything. It's got romance, it's got gore. It's fabulous. There are no words for me to ever describe this series or how much I love it, but you just have to try it. The first one's Stakeout. I highly recommend. Go check it out, please. This one in particular follows shapeshifters. Book 6.
This other book that I read is called Exploring Limits. It's book number 1 in a series, which I don't know if I'll continue it. But anyway, here's the cover. Enough said. I gave it 2 stars.
The next book I read was Out of the Blue by Sophie Cameron, and this book follows a girl named Jaya whose mother has recently passed away, but it's kind of a mystery surrounding her death to the reader. Afterwards, her father kind of falls apart and becomes obsessed with this supernatural event that has just recently happened. These, what are called beings, start falling from the sky, and they're essentially what we would call angels. They just plummet to Earth, and none of them have ever made it. Their wings are broken, they crash, they die. No one has ever survived it. They don't know why it's happening. There's no solution to it stopping. Her father has become obsessed with trying to capture a being. So he's moved them all around, and what I believe they are now currently in Scotland, or she's from Scotland. This book really confused me in terms of geography because I knew it did not take place in the United States, which is what I'm most familiar with. I know it's European hemisphere type thing. Jaya thinks her dad's on this giant crackpot chase for nothing because no one has ever been able to get a being at the right moment. There's no predictability to where they're gonna fall. It's just all over the world. The odd thing is that as she's out and about, a being falls in front of her, and this being, unlike every other, is alive. So basically she is trying to decide what to do with it, to tell her father, but she doesn't know what he's going to do with it or keep it a secret. So this book I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars too. I thought it was a really interesting concept, and I was under the impression it'd be much more fantasy oriented than it was. It just felt more like a contemporary with like fantastical elements, which was a bit disappointing for me just because I had different expectations and different hopes for it, but that's not the book's fault. I think it was really good at talking about grief and feelings of guilt towards specific things. But the whole book was just a bit lackluster for me. I don't know if it was the writing style or if it just wasn't as action-packed as I was hoping it would be. I think the big deal for me was because there was really never any answers that were given to us surrounding the fallen, why they were falling, how it began, if it could stop, and all these things. It just was never addressed. It was more about looking at our human characters. But it does have a lot of representation in the novel. If you're looking for representation, our main character, I believe, is bisexual, and then she meets a girl who I believe is a lesbian. My main character is a person of color. It had a really interesting thing to do with cult, and that was quite fascinating.
Okay, so our final book we both read in June. It's called Change of Heart. It's the first in the Change of Heart series by Mary It follows a man named Jin Rain. He's a warrior panther, but he also happens to be a Rhea. What that means is that he is destined to be the forever, like the true mate of a Samel. I think they're called
Who is the head of an entire tribe.
Yeah. They are in charge of an entire like area of land. But of course, this is all on the DL. There are a bunch of Samels in this area that he and his friend Kane have gone to. They're like 3. And they're trying to lie low because Jin's family found out that he was gay and both a Rhea, and technically only females are supposed to be Rheas. Jin's of the mindset that he's never, ever, ever gonna fall in love with anyone. He just is gonna stay single.
Jin finds out that Logan is his mate.
I thought he's his Rhea.
But he doesn't want to give in to this bond. He doesn't want to make it a real thing because then he'd have to tie himself to a clan, and a clan just disappointed him and hurt him before. And Logan's like, "You're not gonna go," and Jin's like, "See me go." So yeah, so it's basically them trying to figure out how this relationship's gonna work, if it's gonna work, if they want to make it work, and it's just that long journey.
I gave it a 3.
I gave it a 2.5.
Really? You rated it lower than me? I have not gotten into the male romance genre, so I don't have a huge amount to like compare it to. But I feel like it was strong in the beginning. I liked the descriptions of the transformations. That was done very well. But the story kind of fell apart as I feel like it lost direction, and it kind of just threw a bunch of stuff in there like bam, 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 bam. Nor is it to have a further plot besides them falling in love. Jin was kind of concerned because Logan was supposedly like straight this whole time. He's like, "Well, I've only been with women." and I've never seen a man as attractive or fell in love with a man before, but since you're a man, but you're supposed to be my Rhea, I'm just gonna go with it.
Gonna accept it.
Yeah, so you don't know if he's straight, is he bisexual, is he gay? And it's never
Is he
explained.
only attracted just to Jin?
And so that upset Jin because he's like, you don't just become gay, which is true.
And I had a lot of the same concerns as Christian. I thought the beginning was really, really interesting, like the first 30-40% of it. And then after that, I just got a bit, unfortunately, bored. I just feel really bad for saying that. But I think at the beginning you had a lot of tension between our two love interests, and then all of a sudden, it kind of died because they basically... Tension is my favorite part. The tension in their relationship, and then just something happened where something caved and it just was no longer as fun anymore to read. And then it just felt like, yeah, there was a lot of specific language you had to remember, and I was reading it as a Kindle, so it was really annoying to have to try and go and get back to that page where everything was explained. And I think there were a lot of things that just didn't make sense to me, like you had to consult this person who knew all the tribe rules, but that didn't always happen, and as a result, these problems started.
That Logan didn't know the tribe rules. Like, as the soon-to-be leader, you should know. Logan was just super possessive, and they constantly used baby and mate.
Logan used a lot of terms repetitively. Like, he said baby a lot, and really annoyed me all the time. But he goes to Jin and he goes, look at me. And he goes,
like it's a command.
Goes, look at me. I said, look at me. And he looks at me and goes, that's better. Look at me. He's looking at you now. It was just a lot of constant repetitive talk, and the same issues kept happening over and over again. The plot was compromised in order to have the sexy times, and it just didn't work out. Like, they had the sexy times, but it didn't feel like they were important. It just felt like
they were just thrown in there to call it a...
Yeah, and I didn't like that. I want the tension. I want the smoldering looks before anything happens. I want the full experience. I don't
feel like they fell in love right away. Like, Logan was
like,
just
it was the tension there, and
it's
then it just
meant to be, so it just has to happen.
Christian has written a full review actually, and we'll link that down below, but we also really want to do a video review for this because we just have so many things to say.
Good and bad.
Yes, absolutely. And I will definitely want to be continuing with this series, there's no doubt in my mind. Thank you so much for watching. Sorry it's so long. Bye!